This is Collectibles.com Unscripted. I'm Dietrich.
And hey, I'm Alex.
So, regardless of how big or how valuable your collection is, you've probably spent some time thinking about what to do with it when you're gone. Well, maybe not, but if you haven't, you probably should. Will you leave your stamp collection to your grandkids or all those rare coins? How about that vintage Jetsons lunchbox? And what about the Babe Ruth rookie card? Well, actually, we know what to do with that one. We'll take it. Including collectibles in your estate planning is an important facet of the collectibles world, and we're thrilled to have with us Thomas Ruggie. He's the founder and CEO of Destiny Family Office. Tom's a 30-year veteran of the investment and wealth management industries. He founded Destiny Family Office to help high net worth individuals and families face the financial complexities inherent in their business and personal lives. Outside of work, or maybe because of it, Tom is a world-class collector of autographed baseball cards and other sports memorabilia and has achieved a certain level of prominence in the collectibles space with a unique focus on integrating valuable collectibles as an alternative asset into all aspects of a collector's overall planning and portfolio management. Tom joins us now. Glad to have you. Hey, Tom.
Welcome, Tom.
Good morning. Great to be here. And thanks for having me.
Yeah. It's our pleasure.
Yeah.
So what we like to do, we said this before we started recording, generally want to keep this pretty informal. Alex and I are going to bounce through some questions that we have, but we always like to start off with some fun facts, kind of set the stage here. So the first one for the real newbies here, if you're a collector, we don't need to tell you, but what is the definition of a collectible? So kind of like to break it down in two facets here. One is the emotional. So a collectible is an item that means something to you. Childhood memories, nostalgia, and or fandom, right? Something that you're passionate about. It drives you. Alex and I always like to joke that no one needs a collectible, right? That no one needs it. You buy it because it means something. The second, however, is the financial. A collectible is an item that is worth more than its original sales price because of its rarity, its uniqueness, and its overall condition. Plus, many people want it. So that is the definition. Collectibles market size. A lot of people don't know this, pretty shocked by it. It was estimated over $400 billion in 2022 and is expected to cross, this number is eye-watering here, expected to cross $1 trillion by 2033 with over 6% annual growth. Recently published by some market research. I'll insert the disclaimer here. We don't know how valid that is, but it's a big pie. That's what we like to say. The largest market share for collectibles is in the US, with Europe and the Asia Pacific fast-growing regions. While cards, comics, coins, and stamps hold significant share of the market, sports memorabilia is growing at a high rate. And for a collectible to be considered quote-unquote vintage, it has to be at least 20 years old. And finally, artwork and collectibles are subject to estate and gift tax. Oh, boo. Uncle Sam. Can't outrun them. So the same as any other asset. Capital gains tax rate on the sale of these assets is 28%. Is that right, Tom?
No, it's actually 20.
Oh, okay. Anyway, with that said, let's kick it off here with some questions. How about just even the basics? Where are you based?
So I'm based in Central Florida. Born and raised in Florida, and have been around different locations, but from a work standpoint, have 4 offices in Florida, 3 of which are in Central Florida, and we have one in South Florida, Boca Raton. Piggybacking on what you were talking about, I've been collecting for most of my life. I'm 55 years old, and I started collecting at 7 years old. But what's been great is the intersection of really my 2 personal passions, which is number 1, my business, and number 2, my sports memorabilia collection. Yeah. And so what I've really been able to do the last couple of years is intertwine those 2 passions, and it's been really cool. So
it's the best feeling, I guess.
You kind of touched on both sides of that, and that is exactly why I started focusing on my business side on the niche market of collectibles. And not just sports memorabilia, but obviously sports memorabilia is where my passion lies.
What were the first? Sorry to interrupt.
Yeah.
What were the first items? I'm just really interested were those sports cards as you started as a 7-year-old? And do you have any of those still in your collection?
It's funny. After all the times I've been interviewed, that question has never been asked. So
all right.
the first time that I bought a pack of baseball cards, I didn't even really know what they were, but I talked my mom into buying me one pack, and somehow or another, they must have been in my pants or something like that, because my mom ended up washing them.
Oh,
and believe it or not, I still have some of those washed, wet, old wrinkly cards. I still have them to this day.
That's super cool.
But actually, the big moment for me was going to my first spring training baseball game in Clearwater, when I saw the Phillies play the Red Sox, and saw all these kids hanging over the dugout trying to get autographs. And of course, I was like, okay, I want to do that. And so I hung over with a program to get some signatures. And around that time, within the next year or so, I started collecting baseball cards. And I thought it would be really cool to get the cards signed by the players. And so that's really a staple of my foundation of collecting is my autographed sports cards. And in fact, I don't have, with a few exceptions, I don't have any non-autographed cards anymore. So everything, all the baseball cards I have are autographed.
Are those graded, or like it depends? Or
the majority of them are. So I've got 3 top sets on the PSA registry, including the 52 set. 8 cards shy of having the entire 1952 top set signed, and there's 407 cards in the set. So yes, all of those are graded. Anything of value is graded, but I have, I really got the first set that I completed as a kid was the 1979 set. And so that was actually the first set that I went after to get autographed. And so I do have that entire set signed, but out of the 726 cards, I think I've only got about 100 of those graded. So the rest are in a binder. But I also got a lot of those myself, so I know they're authentic.
Based on the earlier definition, Tom, sounds like you've got a bunch of vintage cards in your collection.
I do. I'm definitely more of a vintage collector. I get told all the time that, like, when you walk around my office and see all the pictures and cards and everything that's autographed, that I collect autographs of dead people.
Crazy. They're more valuable when they're dead, right? That's a bit morbid, but it's reality.
Yeah. Yeah.
What would give a number, kind of just a ballpark of like how many items in your collection? What would you say?
So signed cards. So my collection really is kind of 4 corners. A large part is the signed cards, and with exception, I've pretty much got every single rookie card that I want signed, but I'm a set collector. So just to put it in perspective, I've got almost a complete set of signed of 52, 53, 54, 56, 60, 61. Then I jump all the way up to 76, 78, 79, and 80. And I all that's 10 sets there. Plus I've got 51, 53, and 55 Bowman. So that's 13 sets. And with all of those, I'm probably in between completed
10,000
and needing, 10 or 15 cards signed. So I don't know the exact number, but I'm probably in the 5,000, 7,000 range on the cards. My second piece of collectibles is artwork, original artwork. I've got about 55 original artwork pieces. And by the way, I kind of do the taboo thing there as well, because I get those signed if the person is still living. So I've got 37 Dick Perez art pieces, and of those, probably 25 are signed.
Wow. Fun little side note on this. I was at a Cal Ripken Jr. fundraiser over the weekend, and they had a gentleman by the name of David Garibaldi come on stage. It was a charitable event, and he up and he did an original artwork for the honoree, Derek Jeter. Amazing to see the process of this guy. I don't know if you know what I'm talking about or if you've seen him, but he does this hand painting. He does all by hand, splatter artwork, beautiful, and just comes together. And then Derek Jeter signed it. it went for about $55K. So
Yeah.
right there.
Yeah.
I mean, it's cool because I'm looking at it like, that's a big number, but it's not that big of a number for original artwork. Anyhow, the way you talk about your collecting, you seem like a very meticulous individual. Having just met you here, so this relays well to, I think gives confidence to your clients in the estate planning, because you're very disciplined, I think, in your approach.
Yeah, probably so. Again, it goes in line with being in the wealth management business for 33 years. So
yeah, it's just my interpretation, my reaction here. Prized possession in the collection.
Yeah, I've got a few things. Yeah, I've got some really cool signed cards, but probably if you said you can only take two pieces with you, what would they be? So one is I have the trunks that Muhammad Ali wore when he fought George Foreman.
Wow!
And,
wow!
I actually have 4 trunks from Ali.
Do they fit you?
No, somebody asked me that just yesterday. No, he was pretty big. He was a deceivingly big guy. I mean, when you look at the trunks, you're like, holy crap, man, those things are huge.
Yeah.
And then ironically, the only other trunks that I have aside from the 4 Ali trunks is I have the Tyson trunks that he wore when he fought Larry Holmes.
Wow.
And just to put it in perspective, framed, the Tyson trunks are about that big, and framed the Ali trunks are about that big.
Wow. Yeah.
Ali was at least in that fight and the Tyson fight, Ali was much girthier than Tyson was.
Yeah.
I guess Larry Holmes ones would be also pretty huge, right? So compared to Tyson's. Yeah. So that's amazing.
And then the other piece is a buddy of mine that when we used to hound players for autographs, and this, which it's funny to look back on those days. And, I was one of those guys that would, kind of chase players to get things signed. But I was at the 1999 World Series with a good buddy of mine, and we were trying to find out where the Yankees stayed, and they were staying at the Marriott. So we go to the Marriott in Atlanta, and, we're kind of walking around, and we walked into this room, and a photographer was setting up, and we're kind of looking at him saying, hey, what's going on here? And he said, hey, would you guys mind helping me? Long story short, this guy was hired by MLB to photograph the team of the Century players. And we ended up assisting him and being present as all the players came in and did the photo shoot. And then over the course of the next 10 years, I got a 16 by 20 photo from that shoot signed by all the living members of the team of the Century. And then I framed that with a collage of autographed pictures of all the deceased members of the team of the Century. And it's a huge piece.
Mm.
Took me exactly 10 years to get it complete for both deceased and living. And, that was kind of a labor of love. And again, maybe shows how meticulous I am with what I do, but I absolutely love that piece.
Wow.
Also framed with that is I have it was 1999. They carted Ted Williams onto the field, in a wheelchair. And I have Ted's actual ticket from that game signed by him with authentication from his personal manager if that's that it was his ticket.
It's amazing.
That's amazing. It brings in so much passion, right, and joy, I guess, for the last 10 years. Although I guess it was pretty difficult, but still, it's I guess this would be your most precious piece if I would choose.
Well, but that particular piece, different than the Ali piece, I think it kind of underscores the importance of people that enjoy collecting things, which is, it's a process. It's you're trying to complete something, and it's not always easy to complete. And after 10 years of completing that, and like if I ever get my 52 set completed, I mean, it's the chase. The chase is probably just as much fun as having the actual artifacts.
Yeah,
100%.
You Tom, you said you have things nicely displayed in your office that must make it a treat to walk in and enjoy, and a treat for others. what we're doing at collectibles.com is, building a community for collectors, really giving an opportunity for passionate collectors to be able to showcase their items in their collections virtually, right? So that's kind of the value add. The second piece of it is giving collectors the opportunity, which they don't always think about, to better organize, manage, track, and value, right? Value what they have on hand. This kind of ties into the question, why is it important for collectors to start thinking of their collections as part of their estate planning?
Yeah, there's a lot of reasons for that, and to some extent, that's what got me on this path of working with high end collectors to help bring resources such as collectibles to the table, because the reality is I started looking at my stuff, and I've built up over all these years what I consider to be a very significant collection. I get humbled quite frequently by people that have just kind of off the chart collections, but I do have a very nice collection, and my family, my kids, that they don't really care about my collection. And I was actually kind of reviewing my own estate planning, and I realized I had a problem. And
you're just going to cut them out of the will, right? I mean, if they don't like the collections.
Well, I mean, the reality is what I'd be more concerned about is my 22-year-old son giving stuff away because it doesn't interest him.
Yeah.
And, I use this example all the time. I've got, as part of my 52 set, I've got a signed 52 Mantle rookie card. It's pretty significant in value. And, if you were my son Christopher's good buddy and you're walking through and looking at my stuff and I passed away and you say, oh my gosh, Mickey Mantle's my favorite player, he'd pull it out of the case and give it to you. And I believe that is an actual true possibility. Mm-hmm. And so I said, look, I'm in the wealth management business. I guide people on their wealth. I'm very, very meticulous and detailed about what I do. And yet I'm not even taking care of my own crap. And so I went down a path and developed a process of things that collectors, especially higher end collectors, ought to be doing. And that includes, how are you tracking your investments? How are you valuing your investments? How are you keeping up with the ongoing value? Are they properly insured? I mean, my collection has easily doubled in value, if not significantly more than that, over the last 10 years. And it's tough to keep up with even just making sure it's properly insured. And then, of course, what is near and dear to me is the succession plan. What does happen to all of this stuff if I don't make it home tonight? And, I basically have put directives in for, I've got my artwork, I've got my cards, I've got my Ollie trunks, here's what should happen to these. Here's a detailed analysis of everything that's there, what it's worth, but also more importantly, who to contact and presumably if everything were to be sold, what auction houses to use. Some auction houses specialize in some things and some auction houses specialize in other things. So, I developed a scorecard, and it's 10 areas that ought to be looked at if you have a large collection. And it's a pretty detailed scorecard, and people can use it as a gap analysis. Where are you right now? Where do you want to be? And what steps do you need to take to get there?
Yeah, Tom, I was reading about that on your website. And can you just walk for listeners, can you make a really short intro to that and walk us through, just because it's so interesting, I think?
Well, it's a different scorecard because it is a point system scorecard, but yet there's 4 columns that provide a definition of where you are. So if estate planning's the issue that you're looking at, the first column would be, I've done absolutely nothing with this, haven't thought about it. And the last of the 4 columns would be, hey, I've got all this meticulously written out. I've got directives. My family knows where this is. And then there's the 2 in between. And so that's just an example of how we do the scoring. But again, there's 10 items, and I don't know them from the top of my head, but acquisition, value, security, storage, estate planning, and there's 2 definitions of estate planning to me. One is, what I would actually term more as succession planning, which is, hey, what should happen to these assets? And then the other that you already pointed to previously is estate planning, which is, there are taxable consequences potentially to having these assets as part of your estate. And so both of those need to be looked at separately. And also one thing that I address that I think is pretty interesting is, when I talk about succession plan, what's the goal? I mean, like, am I, if I live to a ripe old age, am I going to die with all of my collectibles possessions in hand? Or is there going to come a point where I start, reducing my collection and getting, selling or getting rid of some of the pieces, or even donating to museums or foundations or something like that? And again, I think it's an interesting question that, when you get to my age, you really ought to start thinking about.
I was on the tip of my tongue. I was going to ask you about that, the donating to charity, because I'm thinking about the Ali trunks, right? I mean, certain things like that are just historic, right? I mean, just it's amazing. So do you have a lot of clients, or as your clients think about their succession or estate planning, is charity, foundations pretty significant component, depending on the
it depends on the person and also what you're talking about. So it is something that comes up in discussion with every one of our clients, but some clients have an interest and some don't. And there's tax benefits to being charitably inclined, but I always recommend that that's a situation that you don't necessarily let the tax tail wag the dog, meaning that you probably don't do that just for tax benefits. You really do it if you have an inclination to want to contribute in that way.
Yeah. Well, I mean, it's a legacy, right? It's a legacy move too, right? To be able to donate something like that and let it live on.
Oh, for sure.
For others' enjoyment. Sure. We talked about grading, or we touched on grading a little bit earlier, but is there any other, and grading fundamentally, right, of course, kind of ensures or locks in certain value, right, of a collectible, preparing it for further growth. Any other documentation that a collector should be considering?
Yeah, and that is on my scorecard as well, which is provenance. And so, my sports cards are primarily PSA graded. Not all of them are PSA, but primarily PSA graded. And so there really isn't much more provenance needed for that. But when you're talking about fighting trunks, you need a ton of provenance for that, because I mean, who's to say, without the provenance, who's to say that the trunks that I have are actually the trunks that Ali wore when he fought Foreman? So not surprising to you. I keep notebooks of everything in alphabetical order of anything that requires provenance, and what else is interesting about that is it's not that long ago, 10, 20 years ago, that wasn't really required. Grading stuff and authenticating stuff wasn't that necessary, and so that's a big part, especially of like game used items today. So my Ali trunks are photo matched. It's got multiple authentications. It's got a letter from the leading boxing expert. It's got a letter from Ollie's trainer, which is where the shorts originally originated from. So so keep all of that, and I think it's extremely important to maintain good records of provenance for anything of value such as that.
It's great advice, and certainly that kind of keeping that practice, that hygiene, early on. I suppose we all know collectors, because of the passion, there tends to be pretty acquisitive, right? You just kind of building your collection and maybe not thinking about it. It's a lot easier to do it practically up front, right, than to try to rebuild all the documentation afterward, if not impossible. Alex, I knew you got a question before you jump in, because it ties in perfectly, because Tom, you referred to your, Ali's fighting trunks and the fights he had with Foreman. Fighting being the operative term here. in your line of business, have you come across fights erupting around collections after the passing of said collector? And anything happened there?
Yeah, it's unfortunately, when somebody that has built up wealth passes away, it can get ugly pretty quick. Siblings who may or may not have been best friends, when money and things like that come in the mix, it can get ugly. And I've seen it happen more times than I ever care to see it happen. One particular example, just to put it in perspective, is I had a woman that passed away, and she had a couple of very nice artworks. And what was ironic is you had a son and a daughter, and the son gravitated more towards one piece of art and the daughter gravitated more towards another piece. And so it was kind of assumed that he was going to take his and she was going to take hers. And then he ended up doing research and found out that the one that he liked was fake.
Oh.
And the other one was not fake. And so he did an about switch and really tried to pull a fast one over on her. And again, we're talking over $100,000 piece. And so that ended up erupting into a real big mess. And ultimately what ended up happening was they sold the piece at auction and split the proceeds. He still got to keep the one that he liked that was not authentic. But it's sad to see, money or possessions drive a wedge between people that otherwise, either love each other or are very friendly with each other. And again, it happens more often than you would think.
I have a question. Like, what would you consider, how do you go about understanding what's a good investment in terms of a collectible? And are you focusing for your clients only on specific verticals, let's say art and sports, if you're most knowledgeable about that, or are you looking into all kinds of different collectibles? And if yes, how would you go about it, approaching it, and what are the top, would you say top 5, top 3 verticals you're looking into?
Yeah, so Alex, that's a great question. So as I've gone down this path, I've been asked a lot if I would be willing to help guide clients or potential clients on the acquisition of collectibles, in particular in the sports arena, since that's where my knowledge lays. And the answer has been no up to this point. But a couple things that circling back to some of your questions. So the scorecard that I've developed and the content that we've created. I'm in Kiplinger's magazine every month, writing an article for them. I'm in Charleston where I spoke to a group of financial advisors about collecting and how that can be part of a alternative investment class. So I'm doing an awful lot of that. But as I do that, it is about collectibles in general. It's not just sports memorabilia. So we do a lot of exotic car sponsorships because there's huge collectors of exotic cars. I've got a conference that I'm doing in a couple of months where I'm going to have an expert in the art world, an expert in the car world, and then an expert in the sports world, all talking about collectibles. So the scorecard and kind of the mission that I've put out there really pertains to any collectibles across the board. That being said, going back to what I originally talked about, which is the acquisition side, is we are starting to contemplate, would we assist people that ask for our assistance in the acquisition of the areas that I know about, or if it's areas that I don't necessarily know about, but I have, I've created a great database of contacts, whether it's the art world or the car world or anything else, that we would be of assistance in the acquisition side. So that's probably kind of the next step in our process or venture of what we're doing.
Awesome. Obviously, if you look at the different indexes, right, which I put out for different companies in terms of how collectibles developed over the last 10 years, 20 years. You see the majority outperforming S&P. But, if you're just a collector with, not such a big budget, do you still see opportunity, in collecting certain items which are going to be appreciating in value over the next, let's say, 10 years?
Yeah.
Or is it more difficult?
No, I think there is, and I define, to me, there's three types of people that fall into this niche, if you will. There's the collector, which somewhat historically is what I've been. There's the investor, somebody that gets into this solely for the purpose of looking at it as an investment class. And then there's really what I feel like I've always been, which is the hybrid between the two. So I know what I like, and by and large, almost any time that I'm looking at acquiring something, it is first and foremost because I like it or want it. But all else being equal, I always look at it from a lens of does this have investment opportunity? And yeah, I think that's the best place to be. I think if you're coming into this strictly from just an investment look, unless you're working with somebody that is handling that for you, I think it's difficult to know what to do and what to buy without having that background. But Alex, to answer the question specifically on, a smaller investor, I think that there is opportunity depending on what you like, but the opportunity probably comes in an area that I'm not as familiar with, but it's more of newer things. I mean, hell, my son made, it's not huge money, but made a few $100s selling old Pokemon cards on eBay that he bought 10 years ago as a kid that, he didn't buy with the intent of an investment, and he got a pretty good return on his money. So I do think there's opportunities there, but with newer things, I look at investing in, at least in the sports memorabilia or even things like Pokemon and whatnot, new stuff. I look at that, comparing to what I do as like penny stocks. And, what I typically personally invest in, I call blue chip stocks. And
yeah.
My Babe Ruth autographs are not going to go down in value long term.
I see them tremendous opportunity, especially if you're a true collector, but you still want to kind of being a collector. It's you're constantly on a treasure hunt, almost you learn new things, you try to uncover things. Maybe in sports cards it's a bit more difficult, but for example, in watches and coins, you have this. Then you start to see historical significance of certain things, and which are completely undervalued because nobody is looking into them. But you kind of by learning, you understand the value of it. At least for you, you think it's cool, it's rare maybe in a sense. And then at one point, I saw it playing out many times. The public catches up, and then those things start to appreciate in value even more. So I think this is also an opportunity for collectors to not spend huge bucks at the beginning.
No, I agree. Actually, the guy that spoke with me yesterday, he's more into watches, wine, whiskey, and art.
Sounds like a great guy.
Well, I've got a really good wine collection also, but I'm more of a drinker than a collector. but I still have a nice collection. But he had some interesting tips on, he was talking, and I might be speaking out of term here because I don't really know exactly what he said, so I could be off base. But I think he was saying that a big company had just bought Tag Heuer, the watch company, and he would project that this company is going to escalate the value long term because of what they do in Tag Heuer watches. And so he's saying buying some older Tag Heuer watches probably is going to have some good investment value. And he gave he said he found a gold watch online for $1,800, and he feels he'll 10x that investment over the next 10 years. Again, it is a scavenger hunt, and if you know what you're doing and know what you're looking for, there certainly could be opportunity there.
Speaking Alex's language there regarding watches,
there's another example of Breitling just bought, a couple of months ago, Universal, which was historically speaking a really great brand, but then private equity took over and then it went down, and so now they're taking over and people expecting great things from them. So looking into that for sure. Dietrich.
Look, I've got so many thoughts coming off of this. Tom, I love how you characterized it, blue chip versus penny stocks. I've had some fun trading penny stocks way back in the day, but I think it gets back down to the emotional versus the financial equation.
Yes.
Right? There are, or as Alex and I, when we sort of think about, what's the persona of a collector, there's the investors, some flippers, right? Investor flippers are those that just kind of buy because they love it. In both categories, it's driven by passion, but, you got to think about that way. So I really like how you characterize that. We spoke with someone who's a Guinness Book of World Record holder for Monopoly boards. We had a podcast with him a few weeks ago.
Oh, wow.
Amazing, right? Amazing story. It may not, rank up there in terms of value as some of, items on your collection. There's no Ali trunk value there, but, it's significant. Other quick thought on this that I'd love you to react to is, collectibles, just like any other asset, scarcity drives value, right? So without naming names, we have some, major players in the collectible space right now that are getting vertically integrated. And, if you're producing the product that you're also selling, you start to potentially flood the market. So I think there's going to be some challenges in the card market. You're focused on vintage, so I don't think you have to worry about that. But anyway, kind of bringing it all together. So we talked about grading, documentation, provenance, the emotional versus financial, drivers here. But what do you have to say? Any thoughts when you meet with collectors? Also we talked about, managing, tracking, and valuing. That's what we're helping to do with our system for collection management. But what about storage? What advice do you give collectors, for stuff that isn't hanging on the wall? What do you do?
Yeah, it depends on what you're collecting, of course. Our artwork has a much different need than perhaps baseball cards or watches or something along that line. But but storage certainly needs to be accounted for. You don't want stuff sitting in a garage or an attic, although, there's been some great finds in attics and over the years. But I think when you look at storage, you also look at difference in valuation based on condition. And the bottom line is the better conditioned something is, the more valuable it's going to be, all else being equal. And storage is a big factor for that. So, the 1952 tin graded Mickey Mantle sold for, I think it was $12 million a year or two ago, where a Mickey Mantle that's graded a 1 might sell for $50,000. That's a pretty big difference. And that difference is, the person with the tin, whoever the original owner was, stored it properly, kept it in mint condition. The one that sold for $50,000 might have been some kid's bike spoke or something like that, back when you used to do that as a kid. Not only is storage important, but another factor that we do talk about also is security. We have continuously stepped up security measures with where my stuff is stored, because it's certainly a threat of not only robbery, but you have to look at fire and that sort of thing. And then certain things, I know people that are transporting items and hire security for the transportation because they're so valuable. So again, that's really somebody with a very valuable piece or collection, but that's a factor as well.
I have a question, generally speaking, about the collectibles market. How do you see the collectibles market evolving? And specifically, do you think it's going to be like a steady, continuous growth? Or do we really need some inflection points, what happened during the COVID, obviously brought in new people and people who collected maybe as kids and, now have the disposable income to buy stuff. What do you think is more important? And do we really need those? So is it going to be still fine and steady growth and over the next 10 years? How do you see it?
Well, I don't know about steady, but to put it in perspective, you don't get steady growth in real estate. You don't get steady growth in the stock market. But if you look back over a 10-year or 15 or a 20-year period, you do get steady growth. But my point is during that time that elapsed, it can be very volatile. And I think the same holds true for collectibles. So do I think collectibles will be worth more 10 years from now than they are today? The right collectibles, certainly the blue chips, absolutely. There is a growing demand for people to evaluate additional or new investment alternatives. And like I said, I'm speaking at almost a conference a month about this, and there's big demand for me to come in and talk about this to financial advisors and whatnot, because it's a growing segment that's going to continue to grow. That being said, my advice to anybody that's looking to buy a collectible with the intent of it going up in value is you probably ought to have a mindset of you've got a 10-year holding period. I mean, you might buy it and be able to flip it 6 months or a year from now, but you also might buy it in a year from now, it's worth 50% of what you paid for it. And so short term, it's a flip of a coin, but the right investments into collectibles, regardless of what they are, it's all supply and demand. But if there's demand for it, they're going to go up in value over the next 10 years. And you got to go back to the blue chip statement, and something as simple as I have a few Babe Ruth autographs. The last one that I bought, could I turn around and sell it for more than I paid for it? Maybe not, but I'm pretty confident I'd be able to in 10 years.
Again, my mind's kind of running on this. I mean, look.
While you're thinking, let me tell you something really cool that just happened yesterday. So I was published in AARP magazine, and there was a focus on the Ali trunks. And I got a call. My office got a call yesterday from a elderly retired gentleman in Minnesota, and he said, "Hey, I've got an original ticket to that fight that has just been sitting around for years and years and years, and it'll probably get thrown away when I pass away. I'd like to send it to you to add to your trunks."
Wow.
And so I called him yesterday. We talked for like a half hour. Really nice guy, and he's gonna send me the ticket. He said the only thing he didn't want any money in exchange for it.
Wow.
So the only thing he wants is he wants a picture of the ticket next to my trunks.
That is a great story. I mean,
how cool was that?
It's incredible. I mean, I think it speaks to the community, right? The collector mindset, right? At the end of the day, he has something that he enjoyed, but now he sees it as adding greater value and joy to you. So I love it. Thank you for sharing that. Actually, on a related note, Jim Irsay, the owner of the Colts, he owns the title weight belt. He paid $6.2 million. So I don't know. You got the belt. You may need the shorts. I don't know if something can be done. Yeah. But
and actually, there's two belts. There's two of the exact same belts, and I know who has the other one as well.
But there's only one shorts.
There's only one short. Yeah. It wasn't like the current baseball days or football days where they'll change clothes in between so that they can have multiple jerseys or whatever to sell from that event.
Yeah. Well, look, what I was going to go with is that Alex and I, we, obviously, because with collectibles.com, we live and breathe it. I mean, we're thinking about this all day long, every day, and thinking about the collector's mindset and how we can build something to serve them. It is great to hear from you, though, that there's this, growth now in the view that collectibles are more than just a hobby. The hobby is fantastic, but it is actually now they're coming to their own, recognized as an alternative asset. I mean, that's great to see, because it's been our theory, our premise. We believe there's value, right? We believe there's value in it, so it's great to hear. One thing that I should have added prior, so kind of rewinding a little bit, we talked about valuing and managing. We talked about grading, storage. How about insurance as another component? Do you talk to clients about that? Do most people kind of matter-of-factly know that you should get something insured? Is it a pain in the ass? Tell us about that.
Well, it can be a pain in the ass. I used to get all of my stuff insured through my primary insurance company, State Farm.
Right.
And it's
just on the umbrella policy, or specific to the item?
No, specific. Yeah, specific. But it's not a niche for them. So
yeah.
it was such a hassle to go through and do that. So there are multiple companies that specialize just in collectibles, and it's a much easier process. And just so you know, and kind of a little plug here, but the scorecard I've put together, in tandem with that, I've put a resource document together. And so, and I provide it to anybody that asks free. I'm not looking to monetize this, but if somebody contacts me and says, hey, I've got this collection, it's worth X amount of dollars, should I have it insured? And if so, where would you go? I've got a list of kind of preferred providers that focus on collectibles for insurance, and I forward that out to them and let them go from there. So yes, I think it's extremely important, and it's, if you have a large enough collection, it's best to go through a company that specializes in that, because the process will be a lot easier.
So we're almost up on time here. I've got one more question, Alex, unless you've got something to jump in with. Strategy, for your collecting, Tom. I mean, great story that you just shared. I mean, it seems like you're almost getting inbounds now of people that may have things that are of interest. But is there, I mean, you don't have to give away trade secrets here, but in terms of hunting strategy, I mean, you still find yourself kind of trolling estate sales and garage sales, or is there something a little bit more sophisticated to how you're going about?
No, I don't, and I don't have the time to, candidly. I've got a buddy of mine that's a collector that, I mean, he turns up shit all the time because of, he's got tentacles everywhere, and it just amazes me how much he's able to find on his own, where, basically I'm finding what I find via auctions only, because I don't have those same tentacles out there. And to your point, maybe with everything that I'm doing right now, the tentacles might be starting to extend a little bit. But a great example on this is there's a card that I need for my 52 set that I've never seen PSA slabbed. I've heard there's a few cards signed, but a smaller auction house contacted me and recognized that I have the 52 set, and because it's all on the PSA registry, so he knows I'm missing this card, and he said, "Hey, I just wanted to alert you that I have this card in my upcoming auction."
Wow!
And I was shocked to find that this card was in this auction, and we'll see what happens with it, if I'm able to obtain it. But I'd like to be able to do a lot better job, rummaging through and finding some of the things that I want, but I don't. That's not a strong suit of mine right now.
Treasure hunting takes time, right? So
it does.
Sure. Otherwise, everybody be doing it.
I do get jealous. I was talking with Joe Drellick the other day. I don't know if you know Joe or not, but he was at somebody's house going through a sports card collection and helping them to evaluate it and appraise it and that sort of thing. And I think to be able to walk into somebody's situation, especially if they don't know what they have, and be a resource, I think that would be such a cool thing to do.
Yeah. And a full-time job, right?
Yeah, for sure.
All right. Well, look, with that said, thank you. I would say here, Tom Ruggie is the founder and CEO of Destiny Family Office. Really, thanks for your time. today, Tom. Really, really appreciate it.
My pleasure. And it's Ruggie.
Ruggie,
Ruggie.
I was about to say.
Ruggie. Oh, man.
Ruggie.
But, no, guys, thanks for having me. Love what you're doing. Appreciate and honored to be on your podcast.
Yeah, we'll definitely stay in touch. I think there's going to be more opportunities for us to bend your ear on things. But anyway, if you liked what you heard today on collectibles.com Unscripted, make sure you like, follow, and subscribe to the podcast. And be sure to check out collectibles.com, where you'll find hundreds of thousands of collectors just like you. Thanks.